Hi class. Today we went over notes from 10.1 circumference. Prior to today on Monday, we went over some vocabulary words. So please check Google Classroom as we made a book that held all the vocabulary words, and then we'll be adding to that book throughout the entire unit, as well as adding some illustrations. But this Tuesday's lesson is circumference. So the circumference is the circle, it's the outside, right? So let me see if I can grab a pen. Okay. So the outside of the circle, and I'm not drawing it very well, but the crust of the pie, as you would think, that is the circumference. So if we took a string and put it around the circle and then measured it exactly and then pulled the string out flat and got a ruler, we could find the circumference that way. However, we can't always peel apart a circle to find out the circumference. And so there is two formulas that we gave on Monday to find circumference. One of them is 2 times pi times r, and r stands for the radius. And the other one we learned was diameter times pi, which makes sense because the diameter is half the radius. So I would need 2 radiuses to equal 1 diameter. So that is important information that you're going to want to keep somewhere, is that when we are talking about the diameter, I can just do 2 times the radius to find that. Or if I need to find the radius, I can take the diameter and cut it in half. So there are different ways that we can do this. So those are the two formulas. What's interesting about this is if we were to be given the circumference, so like if we knew the circumference of a circle, and if we divided it by its diameter, it doesn't matter what size circle you have. Anytime you do this circumference divided by the diameter, you are going to be left with pi. And so you get this irrational number, which we usually round to 3.14. But it is important that when you do these in the calculator, that you actually find the pi symbol. And that way we're not just rounding it with 3.14, but we're actually getting a little bit better of an answer where we're multiplying it by pi. Okay, so let's try an example here. So if we want to find the exact measurement, I'm going to show you how that's a little bit different than if we want just the approximate measurement of the circumference. Either way, we can use these two formulas, and it doesn't matter which one you use. Sometimes it's easier to use the one with the radius, sometimes it's easier to use it with the diameter. For 1A, we're given the radius. And so in this example, it is going to be easier to use this 2 pi r because we already have r. So the circumference is going to equal 2 times pi times the radius. And the radius in this case is 2.5. Okay. If I multiply the numbers first, so the numbers that are actually here, the rational numbers, right? We have 2 times 2.5. That gives me 5. And then I still have to multiply it by pi. Okay? In the calculator, when you do this, you want to make sure you're using, again, the pi button, not just 3.14. Okay? And so if I do this in the calculator, I get 5 times pi. And so we get roughly 15, and it does say to round to the nearest thousandths. That's 3 decimal places after the decimal. So we're going to have 7, 0, and then the next number is 7. However, after that number is a 9. So we need to round up to 8. And so this is my approximate value right here for the circumference. So remember up here we talked about finding the exact and finding the approximate. So we found the approximate 15.708, that is centimeters, okay? And so that's the approximate. The exact we actually have up here, I just didn't tell you we did. It was the part we had before we multiplied by pi. And so you're actually leaving the pi symbol in the answer. A lot of times in math, we say to leave your answer in terms of pi, meaning that pi is still your answer. And you can kind of think of it as it tags along just like you were to have like 2x. And so your final answer for the exact answer would be 5 pi. And the reason that's more exact is because we're not having to round this decimal. We're simply saying it's 5 times pi. And then if you were to do that in the calculator, you could see a longer number, where the approximate, we had to round it off, okay? And so that's the difference between the exact and the approximate. The exact, again, is we're going to leave it in terms of pi. Let's try B. So B give us the diameter. So in this case, this is going to be the easier formula to use because we have the diameter. So in this case, we're going to do 16 times pi. That is actually already the exact answer. So the exact would be 16 pi. And you don't have to have this dot in the middle. I'm just showing it so that you know it's there. But the exact answer would just be 16 pi. Okay. To get our approximate, we just multiply the 16 times the pi in the calculator. Again, use the pi button, not just the 3.14. So we're going to do 16 times pi in the calculator, and I get roughly 50.265. And I don't have to round that 5 up because there's a 4 after it. And so this is now my approximate value of my circumference. Okay. So 2 answers here, exact versus approximate. So make sure you look to see in the practice which one they want you to find. All right, a couple more things here. This one is having us work backwards. It's saying, hey, please find the radius when you're already given the circumference. Again, the best formula for that is this blue one up here. Okay, the arrow, the blue arrow, 2 pi r, because it has radius in it, and we're wanting to find the radius here. Okay, and so if I do circumference equals 2 times pi times r, the circumference though is 20. So I'm going to replace this c with a 20. And now remember, these are all multiplications. So it's 2 times pi times r. To get rid of a multiplication, we do the inverse operation. And so we're going to divide by 2 pi. Okay, and you can do it separate or together. But we need the r by itself. So 20 divided by 2 pi is going to equal r. Our calculators are pretty smart nowadays, and so we can actually do this all in one go. The 20 divided by the 2 is 10, and then 10 divided by pi. Again, make sure you're using the pi button on the calculator. So again, we had 20 divided by 2 was 10, and then 10 divided by that pi. R is roughly 3.183. 3.183. Okay, so that would be the radius for a circumference of a circle that was 20. Okay, so number 3 is just like this. The difference is it wants us to find the radius and the diameter. So I would do the radius exactly the same way as number 2, or you could do the diameter first and use this green formula where it's diameter times pi. I'm going to go ahead and pause a second. I want you to pause the video and try number 3 real quick by yourself. Go ahead and pause it while you do that, and then when you return, we'll go over the answer. Okay, hopefully you unpaused and came back. And so now we're going to actually solve this. So if I have the circumference as 124 and I want to know the diameter, I can do the diameter first. It's diameter times pi equals the circumference. So to get the diameter all by itself, I just have to divide both sides by pi, and that's going to give me the diameter. Okay, so we have the diameter. We have 124 divided by pi. And so our diameter is roughly 39, it's kind of hard to write with this, 39.470. Okay, that is the diameter. To find the radius, you could go back through and use circumference equals 2 times pi times r. But remember at the top, I told you, hey, the radius is equal to the diameter cut in half. So really, if you just cut this number in half, that will give you the radius. And I think that's a lot easier than having to do the formula again. If you were to start with this formula that we did in number 2 first, and you got the radius, you could then take the radius and multiply it by 2 to get the diameter. Okay, so depending on which way you did it, they're both correct. So in this case, we're dividing the diameter by 2, and so the radius should have been 19.735. 735. And again, if you were to multiply the radius times 2, you would get this back. And so you can go back and forth. So go ahead and complete the homework from both yesterday or Monday and today. And then there's a Google form for you to record your answers on. That way you can keep the notes for yourself to study. So again, what you're turning is the answers on a Google form, and that is a grade. And we will talk to you later.